All right, thank you. Wow, great. Thanks for coming out. We're going to be talking about psychological safety. So let's jump in here. So psychological safety. Usually when I'm talking to HR, I'm preaching to the choir because you're all on my team. You're like, yay, this is what we want to hear about. This is what we want our leaders to do. But sometimes the leadership team might be a little bit skeptical, right? What is this psychology, soft skill stuff? Does that add to our bottom line? So that's what we're here for. That's what this next hour is for you guys, is to be able to equip you guys with the tools. I'm going to give you some case studies, some geeky science behind it, the neuroscience. What does it do to the bottom line? What does it do to our leaders' brains? Why is it important? Okay, so we're going to jump right in. So that when you come back to that table later on today, you'll have the answers. And hopefully you'll be able to inspire them, not just tell them some factoids about psychological safety. Okay, so we're going to start here. And unfortunately, this is a tragic story because psychological safety has this level of importance. This is all that remained of the 737 MAX that flew in Ethiopia in March 2019. It was so obliterated that they couldn't even spot it from the air. It ended up in tiny little pieces all over the landscape. But where did this story start? It actually starts back somewhere in Boeing with a bunch of engineers, a bunch of geeky factoid guys sitting around a table. But there was something else at that table too. Fear. Fear. These engineers who knew the facts couldn't speak those facts to their management. And that fear kept them from saying, there's something not right with this plane. It's not ready to fly yet. The engineering is not quite right. And so where does this story really start? It actually started a couple years before that, when the American Airlines called up Boeing and said, we're going to buy 400 planes from Airbus, your competitor, because they just came out with a plane that's 10% more efficient than yours, and that is big money for us. And if you guys don't come up with the planes that can do the same thing, and oh, by the way, these planes, we can't retrain our pilots on it. It has to work out of the box, just like the old one did. So that's what they had to do. They said, yes. They set a goal. And that goal became everything. And if you were saying anything that was contrary to that goal, fear was in your heart. There was not psychological safety that was being promoted. There was a goal that was being promoted above all things in that organization at that point in time. So about 8 in the morning, this flight took off. It went about 400 feet in the air. And that pilot was a very experienced pilot. He had 8,000 hours of experience. The sky was clear. There was nothing to indicate that there should be a problem with this flight. But suddenly, the nose started to dive. And the pilots couldn't get it up. And they radioed the radio control. We were having control problems. And they were trying to adjust it. But what was happening was exactly what the engineers couldn't speak about. They had to move the engines forward to make it more efficient. That means the plane got unstable. So they had to install a computer on the plane to make micro adjustments so that the plane wouldn't nosedive like it was. So that computer was making 1,000 little adjustments to the overall stability of that plane to keep it flying normal. You couldn't just fly it as a pilot anymore. You had to have the computer doing it for you. But if that computer didn't work perfectly, that's what happened that day. And they couldn't control the airline, and that airliner went nosedive into the ground at nearly the speed of sound, so that it blew into so many parts that they couldn't even put them back together. That's what happened because a bunch of engineers couldn't sit around the table together because of fear, because of the lack of psychological safety to speak the truth. These are fact guys, and they can't speak facts. Okay? So, what else happened? What were the consequences to Boeing? You think, oh, psychological safety, that's just a soft skill. $18.6 billion later, that soft skill was really in their attention. 500,000 jobs lost later because of this crisis. That soft skill, psychological safety, is in their radar now. Okay? What else? 50% of their stock value gone right after this crisis. Did we suddenly have the CEO's attention? The CEO was called before Congress to testify. He was called on the mat. Why couldn't you listen to your engineers? Because of psychological safety. The goal became the paramount. And psychological safety, well-being of the people and their organization took a back seat for this period of time for Boeing. Is it important to them now? Have they learned their lesson? Sure. Psychological safety has come to their forefront. Here's another company, another case study, VW. They wanted to be #1 automaker in the world. Their CEO set that as a goal, and that was not to be crossed. And he was a stern man. He was known for that. Heads would roll, and he saw that the key for this was having a clean diesel car that could be sold in California. It had to pass California standards, and then it could be sold all across the United States. So the engineers, again, they couldn't talk about it because fear. Everyone feared. People would be fired. Positions would be eliminated if this didn't happen. This is the big goal for the company. This will make us #1 in the world. So what happened? Well, the engineers figured out how to downregulate the emissions. So when the car was on that little treadmill, guess what? The back wheels aren't moving. And the computer knew that. So it dialed back the emissions while it was on the treadmill, because if you drove it like that, it would be like driving one of the old VWs. It wouldn't go nowhere. But then when it went out on the road again, boom, it would kick out the emissions. And nobody knew about it until someone spilled the beans. And what happened to VW? Something very similar. They lost about 50% of their stock. $30 billion later in litigation, and the CEO himself was put on trial. Do you think psychological safety is important to him now? It is. It's not just a soft skill that can be dispensed by people in higher management. It's something that's mission critical for your organization. So what is psychological safety? It's a culture where people feel valued so that they can live out of values and not fear. Imagine if those engineers could live out of their values, speak the truth. Imagine if the engineers of NASA could say those O-rings are going to fail on that Challenger flight. Imagine. So who discovered this whole concept? This woman here, Amy Edmondson, she's a PhD scholar from Harvard Business School. She did research many years ago, about 20 years ago. She had a theory that emotionally safe teams, psychologically safe teams, would perform better than non-psychological safe teams. And she was doing research in the medical field. And so she thought, they'll probably have better outcomes, they'll probably have better, and they were doing a quality initiative. So they were measuring quality initiatives, in the medical field. Okay? So she set up her whole research paradigm, and she had these teams. She did a quiz so she could tell which teams would be psychologically safe and which ones were rating low on psychological safety. And her hypothesis was, of course, that low psychological safety would lead to poor outcomes. And so she ran the whole research program, and guess what she found out? She found out that that wasn't the case. The psychologically unsafe teams were reporting better numbers. She's like, hey, that shouldn't be. And the psychologically safe teams were doing poorly on her research test. But she looked back at her methodology of research and she saw that they were self-reporting the data. Self-reporting the data, saying, oh, that maybe changed a few things. So she redid the whole research, and she had a secret researcher following behind and collecting the quality data. And he didn't know what he was collecting, of course. It's because it's a double-blind research methodology. Very good researcher, so it was very valid research. She wasn't just trying to prove her point. But she found out that the converse was actually true. The psychologically unsafe teams were lying because they were scared. They couldn't report the truth. They had to report everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. Interestingly, the fear created smiley faces. Everything is fine. There's no problem here. When that team really knew deep down that they were compromising their own values and their own things because they were scared to death. And we'll find out why that happens to people's brains in a little bit. But what happened on the other side, the psychologically safe teams, they produced great outcomes. In fact, they were able to report their own failures. And then the managers and the team was able to deal with problems. Because you're never going to fix the problems if they're never reported, correct? So her hypothesis was true, and it's not only true just in this one instance, since she's gone on for 20 years of research. You may have read her book called The Fearless Organization, and how it is that this emotional safety leads to high performance, benefits in learning, engagement, performance, a wide range of organizations, not just healthcare, but manufacturing, all across the board. She's known for this as the discoverer of psychological safety in the workplace. So Google did this project called Aristotle, because Google has tons of teams, and they wanted to find out what makes one team better than the other. So this helps you kind of put in perspective, like, how important is psychological safety? Maybe something is more important. Maybe, so they tested these 5 things: clear goals, dependability, meaning of work, impact of work, and psychological safety. And Google's Aristotle project saw that psychological safety was by far the most important of the key dynamics we found in their team's success. In fact, they said it was the underpinning of the other 4. So as that went up, they saw the other indicators go up. You see? It's the cause of other good things on teams. So not only is psychologically safety important, it's mission critical, according to Google. So thanks for doing that research for us, Google, spending thousands of dollars so that we could benefit that. A German study said that this made processes work. So this is kind of like the operating system. You get a good operating system, you can run other software on it. If your operating system's crashing, you're not going to run processes. That's what the Germans say. Yeah, innovation study. More innovation, of course. Like if you could say, so, I got an idea, instead of that's a dumb idea, you get good, run with it. And you could fail and still succeed. Psychologically safe. Quality initiatives in hospitals, we talked about that. Manufacturing, they've studied, you think those line workers, you think that wouldn't be important to them, psychological safety, they just pull a lever all day. It was the key for better processes. You can't build on processes when you think you're going to get clobbered. You're just going to lie about them like the initial study said. So why is this? We studied the brain now. This is your brain. Of course it is shaped like this. But up top here, we have the neocortex. That's your smart brain, okay? That's the brain that can plan in the future, be creative. It holds all of your values, okay? It's the smartest you. The limbic system is important. It evaluates all of the emotional content of your world. It's a little bit more reactive. It's like, and it's kind of looking for, is there anything bad out there? Diencephalon, that's what regulates you. It send out all the hormones, send out all the electrical signals, change everything. It'll shift your body into a state of fight, flight, flee. It controls that. Not your cortex, the diencephalon, a little place inside of your brain called the thalamus. Controls all that. And then you have your brainstem, which just keeps you alive. Like, God, keep your heart beating, your lungs breathing. So that's your brain. We call these portions subcortical, and this is your cortex. So what happens? Well, this guy named Dr. Bruce Perry, he said this is state dependent. So as things get more unsafe, as we go from calm to terrifying, we go down in our brain functionality. You understand what I'm saying? So in calmness, we can use our full range of our brain. We can plan for the future. We can be creative. We can be innovative. We can hope. We can have values. But when that gets threatened, we start to get into the whoa, be on alert. Then the limbic system starts functioning. And when we start to getting into alarm, that goes offline. And now you're just into like, oh my gosh, I just need to run. And then you get down into terror, which is survive, run. You probably have heard about the toxic workplaces where that's what's happening. But in some way, shape, or form, we'll learn that some of your leaders are creating some form of terror in almost every organization. None of us have any toxic or a little bit difficult leaders that we have to deal with, do we? But this is what's happening to the brain. And what happens to our intelligence? Well, it goes from anywhere from like the average person of 120 to 100, using the full strength of their brains down to like 80 to 60. 80 to 60 in intelligence, the Army won't even hire you because they've determined that that person can't learn a new process. So you've got a decrease in intelligence, a decrease in values, a decrease in creativity. Why would any organization want people functioning less than 100%? In fact, what happens when, those engineers were operating down here? Fear, terror, brainstem, values, gone. These are probably principled engineers. What happened to their values? Gone. Fear. Dissolved in the state that was created by their culture. And this is regulated by these, what happens is you get stuck in it too. Cortisol and dopamine downregulated. They're called neuromodulators, meaning they modulate your whole system. It's like it turns down the thermostat into terror permanently. Or not permanently, but like this is our dominant state. So that you are functioning every time you come into work like, it's going to be scary. That's why there are more heart attacks on Monday morning than any other day. Because people are going into toxic cultures. So here's another point. So all of that happens. And how does it happen on your organization? It happens on a team level, on a leadership by leadership level. This is embodied in your leaders. Okay? So we've got maybe 60 people here. So people in the back, raise your hands. Back 2 rows. All right, back 2 rows. Those would be the people who are operating in, those are your good leaders, meaning your leaders who can perform psychological safety, and the rest of you are your typical leaders according to Gallup's surveys. 70% of leaders are creating disengagement in most workplaces. 70%. And so they've done research. Marcus Buckingham is a famous researcher. They've done research that you can compare the cultures of 2 corporations, but there's more variation within the culture from leader to leader. Okay? You're going to have your good leaders, your great leaders, and then you're going to have, and they're not bad people. I don't want to say they're bad leaders. They just don't know how to do it for the most part. Default is not using your leadership power and control to create safety. It's to create safety for yourself because it's terrifying. So how do we get them out of that? Okay? It depends on the leadership in your organization. So this is an exercise for you all. I want you to make a mental list, or you can jot it down. We need 4 people in your life. Somebody who's the closest to you, maybe your spouse, maybe your kids. Who's closest to you? The very closest people in your life. And then you've got another category, friends, like a good friend. Think of them. And then an acquaintance, you're like, okay, that person that I know that's in that other department, I know their name, but I don't really know them. That's an acquaintance. And then an enemy. None of us have those. People who have really ruined our lives at one point in time in our lives. Think of one person like that. Hopefully you guys don't have that, but Okay, so leadership often happens with like this. Here's your leader, or any normal person. And around them are the closest people that you had on your list. Now ask yourself, would you do anything for that person on that list? Would you do anything for them? My grandson, my kids, pretty much. Would they do just about anything for you if push came to shove? They would. Do you have to use power control to do that usually? Not typically. What about good friends? Can they ask you to do something and you'll respond without leadership and control structures? Like, who's leading this friendship? You don't ask that. You just go, sure, I'll help you move. Sure, we'll go out for breakfast. And then acquaintances, you might not do that. You'll treat them as a normal human being that you see on the street, but you don't have any obligations. You don't feel any sense like, oh yeah, I feel really strong pull that I need to do this for you. They're just an acquaintance, so there's kind of a neutrality there. And then you've got the people down here that are the red people, that are the people that are difficult. Like I've had bosses in my life who asked me to do things, and they had the power to do it, so I did it. Did I like it? Did I want to do it? No. I didn't want to do it. In fact, I was like, if there's any way I can get out of this, I want to. You did interactions with this level and the fear, anger, distrust. So this is a picture of what your leadership landscape looks like. See, you've got your small group of leaders that actually lead on this level. People would follow that leader anywhere. They say, come on, let's go. They follow them because there's a relationship there that's built on relational valuing. It's not based on command and control. In fact, they use their command and control to create value and safety. They're not using it just to tell people to do things. They're using it to create safety. And then you've got maybe another group of leaders that are pretty good at it. Maybe some leaders that are just neutral, not really doing very much. And then you've got these group that are causing people to flee your company. People leave managers, they don't leave companies. Okay, so you've got these leaders in there. You've got your leaders, your pretty good leaders, and your great leaders. It's all based on their ability to create psychological valuing between the people on their teams. So I call this VP culture, valuing people culture. Okay? And in valuing people culture, there's these three core sciences. This one deals with the past and deals with people's personalities, who they've been up until now. This one deals with the present, the emotionality of the current present situation. This is the values, casting that brain into the future, what it's going to look like. And these two are important because you can see VW and Boeing put a goal here rather than a value, and that distorted their outcomes. But we're going to deal with here, present. This is where most leaders struggle, and it's really difficult to train people how to do this because we're not trained in this very often. There's no business school, like how to be emotionally present with your, ever seen that 101? It's not there. Okay, so that's why we developed this, and it's very important to focus on emotional science. Okay, so here's unsafe leader story number 1. Dr. Erickson and his nurse, Joan, are jumping into a surgery. He skipped over the huddle, which is typical, and he skipped over the checklist. And he said, I've ordered an antibiotic. And she goes, which one is it? He said, shut up. I know what I'm doing. Whoa, she learned how things operate on his team. No huddle. He doesn't want to hear what she has to say. And then when she does ask a question, she's shut down. And she's shut down with a tone that shuts her down. You know that we have 2 portions of our brain that calculates the words that are and the grammar that are being said, and then 2 portions on our right head of our brain that are calculating the emotional content. So she's going, woo, woo, woo. Her brain is saying, run away, run away. So later in that day, the patient goes into anaphylactic shock because of the antibiotic that he was trying out, but didn't want to tell anybody. The patient, they managed to save them and wheel them out of the OR. But how do you think this nurse feels? How do you think the rest of the team feels? But Dr. Erickson managed to use his power and control to shut everyone down, not to create safety. So a leader has power and control, but what is he using it for? What is she using it for? What is she creating? Use it to create safety. So what I want to introduce to you, and this is very important, there is a whole emotional science to this. It's not just this woo-woo world of there is no objective reality here. There is a way to do emotionality right. We need to understand this. Now, this individual over here is Dr. Stephen Hayes. He's written books and studied this for years. How to create emotional psychology, emotional science he studied, and how to create psychological safety. Okay, his technique is called ACT, and it's been studied for over 30 years, and it's one of the most verified scientific methods that are used today in the workplace and elsewhere. Okay, so ACT, 30 years used in the workplace extensively. And the key is here, we're going to gain perspective on emotions. You're told in management school to leave your emotions at home. They don't belong here. Deal with them yourself. Throw those away. We're going to have those here. Okay, but you can't. That's the truth. Okay, so science says you can't tell these things to go away. About half of your brain is dedicated to detecting and understanding emotion. So we need to have a perspective on it, and that helps us. So that subcortical or that cortical, your cortex, can look at what the rest of the brain is doing, because it operates twice as fast as the cortex. So your thinking brain is like, wait, what? We're freaking out? What's going on down there? Oh, we're afraid. We're running away. That subcortex is way ahead of the thinking brain. So you have to train your thinking brain to have perspective on what's already happened, which is something that most people don't have. So they get reactive. So Stephen Hayes is trying to teach us to not be reactive to emotions. So your brain doesn't go like, oh, my body's freaking out. And, oh, freak out! Like you're scared of yourself. He's giving people perspective and mindfulness so that they can go, oh, we're freaking out. Why? What should I do? My body's really amped up. Okay, so it gives us perspective on emotions. We'll talk about that. It gives us freedom to act out of values, not just run out of fear. Okay, and it's operating in the present. So how many have confronted a leader, you have a problem, there's a crisis, and they just use their power to like, go away, shut down, I'll take care of this, you go away. I'll tell you what's going to happen to you tomorrow. Great, thanks. So this is operating in the present. Now we're going to learn this approach. Okay, I'll give you the theory here, and then we're going to practice together. Yay, interactive. Okay, so there's an emotional event. Say the team misses the deadline. That's emotional. The bosses aren't happy. We missed the deadline. So let's go down the reactive pathway first. Okay, the leader shuts down discussions. He doesn't want to hear about it anymore because it's causing him emotional pain. He wants to hide the failure. Looking, who do we blame? Let's blame the vendor. Let's blame marketing. Let's blame production. Let's blame shipping. There's no innovation that's going to happen because we're not going to talk about this again. And everyone on the team feels fear. The reactivity is like, oh crap, there's nothing we can do but just like freeze, fight, run. But what if we had perspective? What if the leader came in and said, guys, I know we missed the deadline. Let's all take a deep breath. That's going to suck for us all, isn't it? That hurts. That's scary. You guys all worked hard on this, and I know something probably happened that, let's take this pathway instead. Let's be aware of this. Let's just accept the fact that this is an emotional experience, and we're going to be aware of where we could go with this, with our values. Let's have some open discussions. How are you feeling about this? How did that go? How does that make you feel? Customer service is trained like, oh, you have a problem? I'm so sorry. That must feel horrible. But are your leaders trained with this? I'm so sorry. That feels horrible. Learn from the failure. Like, so what went wrong? Well, if you're over here, you're hiding the failure. Over here, you can talk about it. Over here, you can innovate. Like, oh, so if we had called the vendor earlier and placed the order because they need like 3 weeks to work on this one segment of the project, well, there's the key right there. We didn't know that they had a 3-week turnaround, and nobody told the management that we ran into a problem when we did. We should have told them 2 weeks ago when we ordered. Oh, okay, I didn't know. So we innovate, and everyone feels respected in the team, and that psychological safety grows because everyone writes down in their little mental notebook, boss, it's not scary. We had a big crisis, and he just helped us all walk it through, or she helped us walk it through, and we all felt better, not worse, even though there was a crisis. Okay, so what are emotions? Okay, so let's take a little deep dive. So there's two components to emotions. There's the bodily feeling, and we'll do some exercises based on that, and then it's your cognitive thoughts. Okay, those two combined make an emotion. Okay, that simple fact most leaders don't understand. Emotions are just this amorphous thing that comes out of nowhere. And we're going to try to do some perspective. So I want you guys to take your hands. Okay, take 2 hands. Let me see your hands. Okay, so we're going to put them together, and we're going to write fear on that hand. Okay? Now imagine if that fear was right up here in your face. You don't have perspective on it. All you could see is fear. You're stuck. You're going to be in a reactive mode. Okay? But what if you could gain perspective? What if you could just bring it out here and you could at least read what was happening? You could say, oh, that's fear. That helps your brain actually to be able to identify, I'm feeling fear. What if you could even tease that apart and go, whew, my body on the one hand is, my heart is beating, my lungs are going, I can feel the adrenaline, my gut is tight. Fear. And what if on the other hand, you could say, my thoughts about this are terrified. My boss just sent me an email. He said the email says, come to my office. Oh my gosh. Well, I can imagine a million reasons why that's bad. I did something wrong. He's going to bust me. He's going to fire me! Ah! Those are the thoughts I'm having. So my body's reacting like this, so I'm feeling fear. But what if that same leader or team member could generate that perspective and go, I don't really know. My thoughts are, these are the thoughts I'm having about this, but maybe it's something else. And my thoughts are, if I have values, I'll just go in and I would say, I'll do my best, like I always do. I'll continue to own anything I need to own. That'll be me. That's what I do. And I'll give myself 5 minutes before I go in there, because I got to calm down here. My body and heartbeat are going like mad. Give myself a little bit of grace. Go into the office, and you find out, oh, I had some extra tickets from the sales. I couldn't use them. Can you use them? You're like, eh. Or maybe it is something difficult. Maybe we did miss the deadline. And how are you going to react to that? Okay? So where did I put my clicker? I put it in my pocket because I was using my hands. That's why. So that's the hands exercise that helps leaders understand what the difference is between how our emotions are created. Now, emotional thinking. So we're going to do some cognitive tasks here. And this is something we do in extensive workshops, so we'll give you a little taste of that. Do you think you can control your thinking? Do you think that your prefrontal cortex is in control of all of your thoughts? Well, Stephen Hayes wants us to think again. So here's your first exercise. You're supposed to not think at all. No thoughts for 30 seconds. Ready? Go. Okay. Do we have any super gurus out there that emptied their mind of all thought? No, no one. Zero. You don't have enough control to turn your mind off. You think you're in control, but you probably have a whole bunch of thoughts. Now, here's another fun exercise. Now for the next 30 seconds, don't think about polar bears. No polar bear thinking. Go. Not a single polar bear thought. No white fuzziness. All right, any gurus out there that didn't think about a polar bear once? One person. We usually do have some people have mind control that is like, I did it. So, congratulations, you win. But it's really hard. You probably had to focus really hard on something else, like grandchildren. So, you have to focus yourself. It's very difficult. It can be done. The first one's even harder. Okay, so the reason why I have this floating, gurgling brook is I want you to have another exercise. So think of something that's disturbing. That might be something you're going, oh, this is not going to go well in my life. So just hold that thought for a second. And sometimes you get stuck on this thought. You wish you could get rid of it at 3 a.m. And you wake up and you try to think about it. But ACT has this exercise where we just watch it, like a leaf floating down a creek. You know how the fall leaves, they just sort of. So, in the next 30 seconds or so, I want you to just be mindful of the different thoughts. You started off with a negative thought. See what happens. Does that thought stay for 30 seconds? Do you think other things? So let's go. Let's do this gurgling brook exercise for about a minute. Just be mindful. Close your eyes if you want. Be mindful of the thoughts that come and go. Multiple thoughts come and go. Could you see that you're not in total control of your mind? You're more the control that you have is what you get to look at. Did you notice that one floated by? So that's what ACT trains us to do. That your subcortical system, which you're not particularly conscious of, will bubble up all sorts of thoughts. That's what its job is. Throw that one up. Go. There's another one. And thoughts come and go. But we can focus on things. That's what our brain can do. Okay, so another metaphor that they have in ACT is voices on the ship. So you're that pilot of the ship, you're the captain of the ship, and you're steering your ship hopefully towards your values in your life. Okay? We always try to teach people in culture, steer towards your values. Because how many had goals to hire a whole bunch of people before COVID, and that changed everything? Well, hopefully you still hired and conducted your HR department based on your values, even though your goals changed. So the voice, you as the captain want to steer that ship towards values, but how many of you have other people on your ship that are going, this isn't going to work? You're just an imposter. You don't know what you're doing. What are you thinking? Those people over there, they hate you. All those different, like we were right on that sheet of paper, all those errant voices that you hear during the day. ACP says those are the other people on the ship that are telling you, turn back. Don't go that way. You can't accomplish this. So your role is like that focuser. So you could focus on not thinking about bears. You're supposed to focus your thoughts on, I'm going to go in this values direction. Despite all the different thoughts that I'm having, or even the bodily states that I'm having. I'm going to keep steering my ship towards values. So that's what ACT tells us about our thoughts. But what about, oops, I went the wrong way. What about the other way? Visual thinking. Let's duplicate this one. Did that one? Okay, feeling. Control of feelings. Okay, so everyone needs to stand up now. If you have any leg problems, you might not want to do it. Okay, so I want you to stand on one foot. And if you're really good, stand on your toes. Okay? Stand on the toes, and you see me doing it. I'm starting to wobble. I'm starting to hop. What did you notice about doing that? You put your foot down now. Some of you guys put your hand on it. But what did you notice? Did you notice that your brain was going, okay, start pumping blood? Did you start thinking that? Pump blood to the leg. Oh, little toe, big toe, big toe, calf muscle, calf muscle. Did any of you have those thoughts, conscious thoughts that you were sending to your body? So your body was doing something for you. In fact, there are nerves down in your legs, ganglia, that take care of, like, your signal doesn't even get up to your brain. It's like when you're a little bit out of balance, your knee muscles are taking care of it. Your ankle muscles, your toe muscles know more about what's going on than your brain does in that exercise. So your body is always doing things for you. That subcortical system, it's like that tone of voice. Freak out! It's going to set the whole body into freak out mode for you. Thank you very much, subcortical system. Before you even have a chance to think about it, in 2 milliseconds, boom, it's gone. It's off to the races. Your body is doing things for you. So just like you don't have cognitive control over how to balance. That's all done by your vestibular system and your lower ganglia. You don't have control over your emotional bodily state. Isn't that fun? Your body's out of control. It's doing its own thing. All right? So sit back down, and we're going to do a calm body stand. All right? So this is a little bit more. So just everyone taking a deep breath. Okay, close your eyes. We'll do it one more time. And just notice what your body's feeling. How are your feet feeling? Feel your toes, wiggle those toes. You notice any stress in your heart, or is it just calm right now? How are your shoulders feeling? Is your head feeling tight, headache, anything going on there? How are your lungs? Are you breathing calmly? Everything in a calm state? Yes, calm. Just notice that. So, in our emotions, we have either a calm state of the body, or we have an excited state. Okay? So we're gonna do this again, but I'm gonna interject some negativity. So trigger warning. All right? So close your eyes again, and then we'll do this body scan. But I'm gonna get a little bit loud here. Okay? I'm a little bit yucky. So close your eyes. No! No! No, stop it! Who do you think you are? What is this slop that you give me? Call that a presentation? You're late again. You're always late. This is unacceptable. I will not tolerate you speaking to me like that. No! 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 You're fired! Get out of here, pack up your things now. You just don't get it. Your performance is just not looking great. I'm sorry. You're no longer wanted here. No, no, no. You are not a contributing member of this team anymore. No, no, no. Okay. So return to your heart. How's your heart feeling now? Is it beating faster? Close your eyes. Return to your lungs. Is your lungs breathing happily? What about your stomach? Do you feel anything in your shoulders, in your head? Is there more blood in your arms and your legs? So that's an energetic state with a negative valence. So negative thoughts, what I said was very negative, and your body got energized. So the first was calm, and there was nothing threatening, so you had calm with a positive valence. And so your leaders need to be able to recognize this in themselves. They come into work and say, I'm feeling tired today. My body is down. Is there any reason for me to have negative thought about that? No, I was just tired, stayed up too late. Kids were crying, didn't let me sleep. So your leaders have to have that kind of intelligence, emotional intelligence, to be able to say what's going on, or even to read it in another person. Ooh, you look like you're a little bit scared, uptight, not doing well. So you need to be able to identify this in yourself and others. Okay, do we have any people that are here with someone else? Craig, you can help me out here, right? So this is just sort of a metaphor. So if I'm feeling unstable, Craig, you're on 2 feet. Just give me your hand. What just happened to me? Here, give me 2 hands. Now let go. You see what another person can do? And that's exactly what a leader needs to do, is that picture. The leader needs to contain, create emotional space, both physically and cognitively, for their team members. Their team members come and they're wobbly, and he goes, it's going to be okay. He uses his strength, his power. She uses her strength, her control, her power to create that safety for them. What's wrong? What are you concerned about? I don't think the engineering's right. Wow, that's a big scary thing, isn't it? Yeah, we're going to miss our deadline. And so that energy that Craig led to me stabilized my whole system. And I can be calm in that. I can be safe in that. He used his strength and control to give calmness to me. And that's the picture of what the leader needs to do and create. Okay, so that gives you a picture of what a leader needs to do in the present. Can your leaders do that emotionally? Be aware of their own bodily state, be aware of their own thoughts, and then create that for others? That's what a true leader does. Creates that emotional space, uses their power and control to create that for others. So, here's Dr. Johnson with Tanya. Dr. Johnson called the huddle before the surgery. He said, we're going to go through the checklist. They went through the checklist. He said, one of the things is I'm going to try out this new antibiotic. I've seen some really good things. I had a drug rep in yesterday. She said that this drug is going to be really safe for this particular surgery. Tanya had just read a paper that was done by the University of Kansas the day before. It was just published. She said, there's been some adverse outcomes with that antibiotic in the studies that we've just seen yesterday. So Dr. Johnson feels a little bit like his pride is a little bit hurt, and he notices that in his body. He's pulling back. But he catches it. He's aware of it. So he comes back down and goes, really, I hadn't read that study. Listens to Tanya. They switch the antibiotic to a more traditional one. And the surgery goes fine. And then at the end, they were able to celebrate because they found out that this patient actually had to disclose some of their allergies. So they saved the patient's life. They felt really good about their team interaction. And their team interactions in the future are going to be safe, productive, innovative. So that's what they could create. They created that because he was able to be present in the emotional science. So they could pivot into the future with values. So I'm going to leave you with this story about Cynthia Carroll. What did she create? Cynthia was became the CEO of the world's largest mines in South Africa, called Anglo-American Mines. She was appointed CEO in 2007, and when she came on, she was appalled by one of the things that they tracked in their organization: deaths. There had been 200 deaths in the previous year. 200 100 deaths. That's just what you get with mining, the other VP said. And she said, this is unacceptable. We're going to get this down to 0. Ha! You can't do that in mining? You want to run a mining company with no fatalities? This is mines! People have been dying in mines for years. You don't know anything. What did she do? She needed to create safety in this place. She needed to communicate how important it was. She shut down their most productive mines at the cost of $8 million a day in revenue because they needed to deal with this issue now. People dying is not psychological safety. That doesn't communicate value of human beings at all. So she shut down the mine. What does that send? People, more important than $8 million a day. That sent a signal to her VPs and to everyone on the front line. And she called all those frontline workers together because they know what was unsafety. And so they got all the leaders together, they got all the frontline workers together, and they said, what's going to make this safe? What do we need to stop doing? In fact, they even created a ritual. When they greeted each other, they did this. That your value is in my hands. Your life is in my hands. When I run that machinery, your life is in my hands. And they pledged that to one another, even in that ritual when they met each other, going back and forth. So in those meetings that they have, they were able to establish trust, establish psychological safety because they were worth listening to. They weren't being rebuked. The fear was gone. The line worker could say, yeah, when we do things this way, a lot of times we get killed. It's dangerous. So they created a culture of listening, allowing others to declare what was unsafe physically. And how much more so did they feel psychologically safe as a result? They instituted new programs and allowed the frontline workers to stop the production at any point in time when things felt unsafe, because their lives were the lives online. They instituted rigorous, tight safety standards. They had that new ritual. And after an initial dip in production and some loss of funds, they had the highest profits in the history of this mining company because they created psychological safety. It doesn't only just prevent errors, it creates an abundance of higher profits. And this is not true just of Anglo-American mines. I can give you case study after case study, like Southwest Airlines, where treating people and valuing people turns around their finances and makes them grow even further. So Cynthia Carroll was able to achieve this in just a few short years when she came in and made psychological safety one of her priorities in her organization she was running. So that brings us back to this table and wraps things up for us. I hope that you have tools, scientific tools, and even some practical exercises. What a leader needs to know, what they need to be trained in order to be present with their team and use their power, not to just get things done, to create the safety in which things get done properly to the right values of your organization. So I hope that you can inspire those people around that table. When they say psychological safety, why do we need that? You'll be able to say, this is how important it is. It's mission critical. It sets our people free to innovate, to be creative, and to create greatness in our organization. All right, so that's the end of my talking. So if you have any questions, you can talk to me or Marshall's over there, who's my associate.